Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a prophetic hour unlike any other in human history. The headlines are not just news. They are the fulfillment of ancient prophecies spoken thousands of years ago. The earth is trembling. The nations are in turmoil, and the heavens are sending signals that only those with spiritual eyes can see. Yet, in the midst of this global chaos, there is one sign that stands above them all, a sign that Jesus himself told us to watch for, the fig tree. When Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives and his disciples asked him, "What shall be the sign of your coming and of the end of the world?" He didn't point to Rome. He didn't point to politics. He pointed to a tree, a fig tree. Not just any tree, but a prophetic symbol that has been hidden in plain sight for centuries. He said, "When you see the fig tree begin to blossom, know that summer is near, even at the doors." The fig tree is not just a plant in the Middle East. It is the prophetic timepiece of God, signaling to the final generation that the return of the King is at hand. Tonight, I am not here to share theories or to entertain curiosity seekers. This message is a wake-up call. The fig tree has blossomed. The prophetic clock is ticking, and the signs are converging at a pace we have never seen before. The question is not whether prophecy is being fulfilled. The question is, are we awake enough to recognize it? When Jesus spoke of the fig tree blossoming, he wasn't offering a mere illustration of nature or a random parable disconnected from reality. He was unveiling a prophetic code, one that would remain hidden in plain sight for generations, only to be fully understood in the final days. The fig tree has always been more than just a plant in the Middle East. It has served as a national symbol of Israel, deeply woven into the cultural and spiritual fabric of the Jewish people. From the early days of the Old Testament, prophets used the fig tree as a metaphor for the nation itself. Yet, despite this, for centuries, many scholars and theologians missed the depth of what Jesus was revealing when he said, "Learn the parable of the fig tree." To grasp the full magnitude of this prophetic symbol, one must first understand how the fig tree was perceived in ancient Israel. In the Old Testament, Israel is often compared to a fig tree, a vine, or an olive tree. In Hosea 9:10, God says, "I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first ripen the fig tree at her first time." Jeremiah 24 describes baskets of figs representing both the good and bad among the people of Judah. Over and over, the fig tree becomes an emblem of Israel's spiritual condition and national destiny. But while these symbols were well known, the prophetic significance of the fig tree blossoming again was overlooked until a pivotal moment in human history. When Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives, speaking of the signs that would precede his return, he pointed to the fig tree and said, "When its branch becomes tender and puts out leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you know that he is near at the very gates." He wasn't delivering a horticultural lesson. He was giving a timeline marker that would identify the generation alive when prophetic fulfillment reaches its climax. The fig tree putting forth leaves is a visual cue, an unmistakable sign that the season of his coming is upon us. For nearly 2,000 years after the dispersion of the Jewish people in 70 AD, Israel ceased to exist as a sovereign nation. Scattered among the nations, persecuted and oppressed, the Jewish people clung to the promise of a return to their ancestral homeland. Yet for all those centuries, the fig tree of Israel remained barren, its branches bare, its roots hidden beneath the surface of history. Generations of believers read Jesus' words but could not fully comprehend how or when the fig tree would blossom again. Then came the year 1948, a prophetic milestone that would shake the spiritual realm and fulfill ancient promises. Against all odds, the nation of Israel was reborn in a single day, fulfilling Isaiah's astonishing prophecy. Who has heard such a thing? Shall a nation be born at once? The barren fig tree, which had appeared lifeless to the eyes of the world, suddenly began to bud. The dry branches that had been dormant for centuries sprouted green shoots. The parable of the fig tree was no longer a mystery. It was a reality unfolding before the eyes of a watching world. This miraculous event was not just a political occurrence or a fluke of history. It was a divine signal. The blossoming of the fig tree marked the beginning of the countdown to the Messiah's return. The generation that witnessed the rebirth of Israel became the generation directly addressed by Jesus' words. The parable had been decoded, and its message was clear. The prophetic clock had resumed ticking. Yet, the blossoming of the fig tree is not a one-time event. It signifies an ongoing process as Israel not only returns to the land, but also to its prophetic destiny. Every political event, every conflict, every peace agreement, And every spiritual awakening in Israel is a leaf, a bud, a branch extending from the fig tree, signifying that the season of harvest is drawing closer. It is as if God, through the fig tree, is orchestrating a visual sermon for the entire world to see. The significance of the fig tree is so profound that ignoring it would be like overlooking the ark in Noah's time. It is the centerpiece of end-time prophecy. It's the key to understanding the times and the seasons. What was once a hidden code is now a flashing signpost for those who have spiritual eyes to see and ears to hear. The fig tree's revival is not merely a nod to Israel's survival. It's a testament to God's faithfulness, his covenant promises, and a final alert to the church that the days of grace are numbered. In the annals of world history, there are pivotal moments when the hand of God moves so evidently that even skeptics are left in awe. The birth of Israel in 1948 is one such moment, a divine act that was not merely a political maneuver or a geopolitical accident, but the literal fulfillment of a prophecy spoken thousands of years ago through the prophet Isaiah. The question posed in Isaiah 60:8 is breathtaking in its precision. Who hath heard such a thing? Who hath seen such things? Shall the earth be made to give birth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For centuries, this question lingered in the scrolls of the prophets, a mystery veiled in the corridors of time, awaiting its appointed season. For nearly 2 millennia, the Jewish people wandered as exiles among the nations. Scattered after the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, they became a people without a homeland, enduring persecution, exile, and unspeakable suffering. Empires rose and fell, borders were redrawn, and the land of Israel became a barren, desolate shadow of its former glory. Yet, throughout all this, the Jewish people carried within their hearts an unshakable promise of a yearning, a hope, an ancient dream that one day they would return to Zion. This wasn't just cultural nostalgia. It was the echo of a prophetic word, a divine oath that God had not forgotten his covenant. The 20th century, with all its technological advances and political upheavals, set the stage for what would become one of the greatest prophetic fulfillments in modern times. The horrors of the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews were systematically murdered, became the catalyst that stirred the conscience of the world. Yet, even amidst this unspeakable tragedy, God was orchestrating his purposes behind the scenes. What the enemy intended for evil, God was about to turn into a testimony of resurrection and national rebirth. On May 14, 1948, something unprecedented took place. After 78 years of dispersion, the Jewish people declared the establishment of the State of Israel. On that day, David Ben-Gurion stood before the world and read the Declaration of Independence, affirming the right of the Jewish people to live as a free nation in their ancestral homeland. It was not a gradual process. It happened in a day. At that very moment, Isaiah's ancient question transformed from a prophetic riddle into a historical fact. A nation was born at once. But this was more than a political milestone. It was a spiritual earthquake in the timeline of biblical prophecy. The fig tree, long dormant and seemingly lifeless, began to bud. Jesus' words in Matthew 24 were no longer a distant allegory, but a present reality. The rebirth of Israel became the undeniable sign that the prophetic clock had struck a new hour. It signified that the season of the end had begun, and the generation that witnessed it would not pass away until all the prophecies concerning his return were fulfilled. Satan knew the implications of Israel's rebirth. The intense opposition that immediately followed the Arab-Israeli war was a desperate attempt by the enemy to choke the fig tree at its earliest sprouting. Yet, against overwhelming odds, with limited resources and barely an army to speak of, Israel not only survived but thrived. This victory was not due to military genius alone. It was the result of divine intervention. It was as though the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob stepped into history once again to ensure his prophetic word would stand. The United Nations vote, the British withdrawal, the immediate recognition by the United States, none of these were random events. They were all pieces of a prophetic puzzle falling perfectly into place. It was as if the sovereign hand of God was guiding kings, presidents, and nations to align with his divine agenda. The heavens were declaring, the time is now, and those with spiritual discernment recognized that history was not being made, it was being fulfilled. The miracle of 1948 is not just in the fact that a nation was born in a day, but that it marked the beginning of a chain reaction in the prophetic realm. The return of the Jews to their homeland set the stage for numerous end-time events. The deserts began to bloom. The Hebrew language was resurrected from near extinction, and Jerusalem, though divided at the time, would soon come back into Jewish hands in 1967. Each of these milestones is connected to that initial blossoming of the fig tree in 1948. It is no coincidence that after 1948, the pace of prophetic fulfillment accelerated. The establishment of Israel was the trigger, the opening act of the final chapter in God's redemptive plan. For the church, the birth of Israel is not a distant political event. It is a divine alarm clock, a wake-up call that the times and seasons are shifting rapidly. The generation that witnessed Israel's rebirth was ushered into the era of the fig tree, where every unfolding event points to the soon return of the Messiah. When Jesus stood on the Mount of Olives and delivered what is known as the Olivet Discourse, he spoke words that would echo through time, stirring the hearts of every generation. Yet, among all the profound revelations he gave about wars, famines, pestilences, and earthquakes, there was one statement that stands out with piercing clarity. He said, "Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled." For centuries, believers debated the meaning of this generation. Was Jesus speaking to his immediate audience? Or was he pointing to a future generation that would witness a unique prophetic sign? The key to unlocking this mystery lies in the parable of the fig tree. The fig tree, as established, is a prophetic symbol of Israel. For nearly 2,000 years, that fig tree stood barren, seemingly forgotten. But in 1948, when Israel was reborn as a nation, the fig tree began to blossom. Jesus wasn't giving a vague timeline. He was anchoring the prophetic clock to a visible, tangible event. When the fig tree blossoms, the countdown begins. Therefore, the generation that sees the fig tree bud is the generation Jesus referred to when he said, "This generation shall not pass." We are not waiting for the fig tree to bloom. It already has. That makes us the terminal generation. But what does it mean to be the terminal generation? It means we are living in the final phase of the prophetic timeline, the last stretch before the return of Christ. The term terminal is not meant to invoke fear, but to awaken urgency. Just as a flight reaches its terminal gate before departure, so too are we positioned at the terminal gate of prophetic destiny. The events unfolding around us are not random acts of chaos. They are orchestrated fulfillments of biblical prophecy accelerating toward a climactic conclusion. Since the rebirth of Israel, the acceleration of prophecy has been undeniable. Technological advancements, geopolitical shifts, moral decay, and global alliances are converging at a pace never before seen in human history. In Daniel 12:4, the prophet was told that in the time of the end, knowledge would increase and many would run to and fro. We are living in that era right now. Information doubles within months, travel has become instantaneous, and the digital age has connected the globe in ways unimaginable to previous generations. This rapid acceleration is not coincidental, it is prophetic. Moreover, the spiritual landscape mirrors the conditions described in Scripture. The Apostle Paul wrote in 2 Timothy 3 that in the last days, perilous times would come. He described a society marked by lovers of self, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, and lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. Read today's headlines. Observe modern culture, and it becomes evident that Paul's description is a perfect reflection of our current generation. The moral compass has been shattered, and the world is spinning toward prophetic fulfillment at breakneck speed. The convergence of signs is perhaps the most glaring indicator that we are the terminal generation. Wars and rumors of wars are constant. The Middle East, particularly Israel, remains the focal point of global tension. Natural disasters are increasing in frequency and intensity. Pestilences and plagues, once thought to be relics of the past, are now headline news. Economic instability threatens to shake the foundations of global markets. All these are not isolated incidents. They are the birth pangs Jesus described, growing in intensity as the day of his return approaches. The regathering of the Jewish people to their homeland is another unmistakable sign. Prophets like Ezekiel foresaw the dry bones of Israel coming back to life, and we are witnesses to that very miracle. Aliyah, the return of Jews to Israel from the four corners of the earth, continues to this day. Each plane that lands in Tel Aviv carrying Jewish families returning to their ancient homeland is a testimony that God's prophetic word is alive and active. Furthermore, the rise of technology capable of fulfilling apocalyptic prophecies underscores the unique position of our generation. The mark of the beast, once a theological abstraction, is now technologically feasible through digital identification systems, biometric scans, and global financial controls. The two witnesses of Revelation, whose deaths will be seen by the entire world, is no longer a mystery in an age of instant global broadcasting and live streaming. These developments were unimaginable to prior generations, but are now part of our daily reality. To be the terminal generation is a sacred responsibility. It means we are the watchmen on the wall, tasked with discerning the times and sounding the alarm. The prophecies are not unfolding slowly anymore. They are accelerating. Every day brings new headlines that align with biblical predictions. We are living in a window of time that prophets long to see. Angels peer into these moments with awe, and the church must awaken to the realization that we are not spectators. We are participants in the final act of God's redemptive plan. In the vast expanse of human history, nations rise and fall, empires come and go, and global powers shift like sands in the desert. But there is one nation seemingly small and insignificant on the world map that serves as the heartbeat of God's prophetic clock. That nation is Israel. Every major end-time event, every significant prophetic fulfillment finds its anchor in Israel. If you want to discern where we are on God's prophetic calendar, you must look to Israel, not Washington, not Moscow, not Beijing. Israel is God's timepiece, and it is the second hand that marks the countdown to the Messiah's return. From the moment God made an everlasting covenant with Abraham, the descendants of Israel became a central figure in his redemptive plan. The prophets foretold of their scattering and their regathering, of their chastisement and their restoration. And while the world often treats Israel as a political inconvenience, the heavens recognize it as the epicenter of divine activity. Jesus himself alluded to this when he instructed his followers to observe the fig tree and all the trees, indicating that Israel's destiny is intricately connected to the unfolding of end-time prophecy. The wars that have engulfed Israel since its rebirth in 1948 are not random geopolitical conflicts. They are spiritual battles with prophetic significance. Each war, from the War of Independence to the Six-Day War in 1967 and the Yom Kippur War in 1973, has marked prophetic milestones. These are not mere historical footnotes. They are the ticking seconds of God's time clock. The Six-Day War, in particular, was monumental. In a supernatural span of 6 days, Israel not only defended itself against multiple invading armies, but also recaptured Jerusalem, fulfilling Jesus' prophecy that Jerusalem would be trampled by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles were fulfilled. With the city back in Jewish hands, the prophetic second hand ticked forward, signaling a new phase in the end-time narrative. The peace treaties signed by Israel are also prophetic markers. Each handshake, each signed accord is more than a diplomatic gesture. It is a movement on God's clock. The Bible speaks of a future covenant involving Israel that will mark the final 7-year period of human history before the return of Christ. While that ultimate covenant is yet to be signed, the current peace processes are dress rehearsals, aligning nations and positioning political leaders for what is to come. Every attempt at peace, every negotiation is another tick of the prophetic clock, bringing us closer to the fulfillment of Daniel's 70th week. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem remains one of the most contested pieces of real estate on earth. Yet, in the spiritual realm, it is the most significant plot of land. The Temple Mount is not merely an archaeological site or a religious monument. It is the focal point of end-time prophecy. The rebuilding of the third temple is not a matter of if, but when. The preparations are already underway. Temple vessels have been reconstructed, priestly garments are ready, and even the red heifer, required for purification rituals, has been located and bred. These developments are not coincidental. They are prophetic indicators that the second hand is moving with precision toward the appointed hour. Israel's technological advancements and military prowess also serve as signs of divine orchestration. In a region surrounded by hostility, Israel has not only survived but thrived, becoming a global leader in innovation, agriculture, and defense. This level of success against overwhelming odds is not natural, it is supernatural. It is as though God is showcasing to the world that his hand is upon this nation, fulfilling his promises to protect and prosper them in the land he swore to their forefathers. Even the opposition against Israel is a prophetic sign. The Bible foretells that in the last days, all nations will gather against Jerusalem. The increasing isolation of Israel on the world stage, the relentless bias in international forums, and the growing anti-Semitic sentiments across the globe are all part of the prophetic narrative. As Israel becomes more marginalized politically, it simultaneously becomes more central prophetically. The nations may conspire against her, but in doing so, they are unknowingly fulfilling the very scriptures they seek to dismiss. Israel's agricultural blossoming is another visible sign that the fig tree is not only alive but thriving. What was once a barren wasteland has been transformed into a fertile, flourishing landscape. Vineyards, orchards, and lush fields now cover the land, fulfilling the prophetic words of Ezekiel and Amos, who spoke of Israel's restoration and agricultural rebirth in the last days. Every harvest, every blooming flower, is a testament that God's word is being fulfilled before our eyes. Those who have spiritual discernment understand that the ticking of this prophetic clock is growing louder with each passing day. Israel is the second hand that measures how close we are to the midnight hour. As the seconds move forward, every headline, every conflict, every peace summit is part of a divine countdown. The fig tree is not dormant. It is alive, flourishing, and signaling the nearness of the culmination of all things. When Jesus described the events that would precede his return, he painted a vivid picture of a world in turmoil. He spoke of wars and rumors of wars, of famines, pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places, and signs in the heavens. But he also gave a parable, the parable of the fig tree. This was not an isolated metaphor. It was a key piece in a prophetic puzzle where multiple signs would converge, pointing unmistakably to the season of his return. The fig tree's blossoming was never meant to stand alone. It was designed to be part of a prophetic symphony, accompanied by the rumblings of war, the shakings of the earth, and the cosmic disturbances that would serve as God's megaphone to a generation that has grown spiritually deaf. The rebirth of Israel in 1948 signaled the beginning of this convergence. It was the trigger event, the starting point that activated a rapid sequence of prophetic fulfillments. Since that time, the frequency and intensity of global events have escalated, just as Jesus described birth pangs that would increase as the hour of delivery approaches. Each contraction brings the world closer to the moment when the eastern skies will split and the king will return in power and glory. Wars and rumors of wars have become a constant backdrop in this prophetic hour. From the Cold War tensions of the 20th century to the perpetual conflicts in the Middle East, the world has been teetering on the edge of major global conflict. The rise of rogue nations with nuclear ambitions, the threat of cyber warfare, and the increasing instability in geopolitical alliances all contribute to an atmosphere of unease. Yet these are not merely political problems, they are prophetic indicators. The wars are not random. They are part of the convergence, aligning perfectly with the timelines laid out by the prophets and by Christ himself. Natural disasters have also taken center stage in this convergence of signs. Earthquakes have increased in both frequency and magnitude. Regions once considered stable have been rocked by seismic activity, leaving scientists baffled and populations in fear. Volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, and catastrophic storms are becoming the norm rather than the exception. The earth itself is groaning, echoing the Apostle Paul's words in Romans 8:22, where he describes creation groaning in labor pains until now. These natural upheavals are not just environmental issues. They are the earth's response to the approaching fulfillment of God's prophetic timeline. Pestilences and plagues have also intensified. In recent years, the world has witnessed global pandemics that have crippled economies, altered societies, and instilled a pervasive fear among nations. These pestilences are part of the convergence, fulfilling Jesus' words that such diseases would be among the birth pangs of the last days. Modern medicine may develop vaccines and treatments, but the prophetic word foretells that pestilences will remain a sign of the end until Christ returns. But perhaps the most overlooked aspect of this convergence is the realm of cosmic disturbances. The Bible speaks repeatedly of signs in the sun, moon, and stars. The blood moon tetrads, solar eclipses, and unusual celestial alignments are not to be dismissed as mere astronomical phenomena. They are heavenly billboards declaring that the king is coming. Joel prophesied that the sun would be turned to darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord. These cosmic events are divine interruptions designed to capture the attention of a distracted generation. The convergence of these signs is not accidental. It is prophetic precision. It is God's way of amplifying his message to a world that is drowning in noise and misinformation. The fig tree blossoming in 1948 was the initial sign, but the accompanying wars, natural disasters, pestilences, and cosmic events are the echoing alarms that cannot be silenced. Together, they form a prophetic convergence that is unparalleled in history. What makes this convergence unique is not just the presence of these signs, but the fact that they are happening simultaneously and with increasing intensity. In past generations, there may have been isolated wars, sporadic earthquakes, or rare celestial events. But in this generation, we are witnessing the synchronization of these events on a global scale. It is as if the prophetic dominoes are lined up, and one by one, they are falling in rapid succession, each triggering the next in a divine sequence that leads to the return of Christ. This convergence is not designed to bring fear to the hearts of believers, but to ignite a sense of urgency and preparedness. It is God's way of shouting through the chaos, reminding his people that the time is short. The fig tree has blossomed, and now the earth and the heavens are testifying in unison that the King is at the door. These converging signs are not random occurrences, they are prophetic appointments set in motion by the one who declares the end from the beginning. In every generation, there are moments when God raises his voice above the noise of human activity, sending a clarion call that demands attention. We are living in such a moment right now. The fig tree is no longer a dormant symbol. It is alive, waving its branches as a prophetic signal to this generation. This message is not intended for the casual observer, the curiosity seeker, or the spiritually indifferent. It is a wake-up call to the body of Christ. An urgent appeal to watch and be ready, because the signs are not just aligning, they are shouting. Jesus' warning in Matthew 24 was not given to instill fear, but to provoke vigilance. He knew that as the world plunged deeper into deception, distraction, and spiritual slumber, his followers would need clear markers to stay alert. The fig tree, representing Israel's rebirth and prophetic destiny, would be that marker. When its branches became tender and its leaves began to sprout, it would be the undeniable signal that his return was near, even at the doors. That time has come. The fig tree is flourishing, and its message is reverberating across the earth. The King is coming, and the hour is late. But the question remains, are we spiritually awake, or are we asleep at the hour of his appearing? Jesus warned that in the last days, the condition of many hearts would mirror the parable of the 10 virgins. All 10 had lamps. All 10 were awaiting the bridegroom. But only 5 were wise enough to keep their lamps filled with oil. The others allowed complacency and distraction to lull them into spiritual slumber. By the time they awoke, it was too late. The door had been shut. This is a sobering picture of the final generation. It is not enough to carry a lamp of profession. We must carry the oil of intimacy, discernment, and readiness. The fig tree is waving its branches in our direction, but are we looking up, or are we so engrossed in the affairs of this life that we've become spiritually drowsy? The enemy's strategy in this hour is not always to launch blatant attacks, but to seduce believers into apathy, to fill their lives with constant noise, endless entertainment, and a flood of distractions that drown out the urgency of the times. The fig tree's message is clear, but many have muted its sound with the volume of worldly pursuits. The call to watch is more than a passive suggestion. It is a divine mandate. To watch means to live with a heightened spiritual sensitivity, to discern the times, and to align our lives accordingly. It means we are not caught off guard by the suddenness of prophetic events, but rather we are positioned in prayer in the Word and in a posture of readiness. Jesus said his return would come as a thief in the night, not to those who are watching, but to those who are sleeping. The fig tree is broadcasting the nearness of that hour, but are we tuned in? Being ready is not about setting dates or indulging in sensationalism. It's about a daily, intentional walk with the Lord, a life lived in expectation, not assumption. Readiness is reflected in our priorities, our passions, and our pursuits. It's about trimming our spiritual lamps, keeping our hearts free from the entanglements of sin, and ensuring that our lives are aligned with His purposes. The fig tree is speaking loudly, but readiness requires that we silence the competing voices that seek to dull our spiritual senses. This is not a time for the church to be asleep in the light. The convergence of prophetic signs demands a vigilant, awakened bride. The fig tree's branches are not subtly moving. They are waving, signaling to the body of Christ that the final moments are upon us. The call to watch and be ready is not optional, it is essential. For when the trumpet sounds and the bridegroom appears, it will be too late to awaken. The preparation must happen now. The spiritual lethargy that has crept into the modern church is one of the greatest threats to readiness. We live in a generation obsessed with the temporal, infatuated with self, and numbed by an endless cycle of information and entertainment. Yet, in the midst of this spiritual fog, the fig tree remains rooted, standing as a prophetic witness that God's word is true, His promises are sure, and His return is imminent. The question is not whether the fig tree is speaking. The question is whether we are listening. In the days of Noah, the people were eating, drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage until the day Noah entered the ark. Life went on as usual, oblivious to the approaching judgment. Jesus said it would be the same in the days leading up to His return. The fig tree is waving, but many are blind to its movement. The ark of safety is Christ Himself, and the door of grace is still open, but for how much longer? The call is urgent. Wake up, trim your lamp, and be ready. Brothers and sisters, we are no longer living in the days of waiting. We are living in the days of watching. The fig tree has blossomed, the prophetic clock is ticking, and the convergence of signs is screaming across the earth. The alarms of heaven are ringing louder than ever before. This is not a season for casual Christianity or lukewarm faith. This is the hour to rise up, to be sober, to be vigilant, and to keep our spiritual lamps burning brightly. The pages of Bible prophecy are not future events to be speculated upon. They are present realities unfolding before our very eyes. Every tick of the prophetic clock brings us closer to the moment when the trumpet will sound and the King of Glory will return for his bride. The question is not whether he is coming. The question is, are we ready? We are the generation upon whom the ends of the age have come. We are the watchmen positioned on the walls of time. It's time to shake off the slumber, to break free from the distractions, and to tune our hearts to the rhythm of heaven. The fig tree is waving, the King is at the door, and the Spirit of God is calling his people to prepare for the greatest moment in human history. This is the final call to awaken, to align, and to advance. The time of playing church is over. The time of preparing the bride has come. Watch, pray, and lift up your heads, for your redemption is drawing near.